Welcome. Our story today is titled, The Enchanted City of Stars and the Gates of Worlds. It is one of the fantasy stories. Close your eyes and listen. Once upon a time in a land far, far away, in the heart of a boundless expanse, where the golden sands embraced the scorching heat of the sun by day and shimmered with the silver coolness of the moon by night, lived a young man named Leo. His name wasn't derived from the enchanting night sky, but was simply a nickname given to him by his late mother for his dark skin, the color of a night dotted with stars. Leo was a slender young man, barely 20 years of age, battling the harsh realities of life in a humble tent he had inherited from his parents. His days were monotonous, beginning with sunrise and ending with sunset, spent searching for any odd job to earn his daily bread. He would gather firewood at times, help shepherds at others, and sometimes spend long nights trying to hunt wild rabbits or desert foxes to sell in the nearest oasis. Leo stood out from the other young men of the expanse for his deep love of old stories and tales that his elderly grandfather used to tell him on cold winter nights. These tales spoke of hidden cities, buried treasures, and spirits dwelling in the stars. Leo had always considered them mere fables intended to amuse people in their spare time, but a deep part of him always felt that there was something more than just fantasy in those narratives. One day, while Leo was rummaging through an old chest filled with his deceased parents' belongings, he came across something peculiar. It was a piece of weathered leather, with faded drawings and winding lines whose meaning he didn't initially understand. The leather looked very old, perhaps hundreds of years. Leo initially dismissed it, but something drew him back to it time and time again. One night, while sitting in front of his tent under the full moonlight, Leo decided to take another look at that piece of leather. As he scrutinized the lines and symbols, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. Under the bright silver moonlight, some small dots on the leather began to glow with a faint light. Leo took the piece of leather inside the tent and lit an oil lamp. He began to examine it more carefully, trying to connect the glowing dots with the drawn lines. Suddenly, he realized that what he was looking at wasn't just random drawings, but a map, a detailed map of a certain location, but he couldn't identify the place. There were strange markings and symbols he had never seen in his life before. Leo spent the entire night contemplating the map, trying to decipher its symbols and understand its meaning. His heart was pounding, a strange feeling filling him, a mixture of curiosity and hope. Could this map be leading him to something important? Something that could change his impoverished life? With the sunrise, Leo decided to embark on a journey to search for the place indicated by the map. He gathered some of the meager provisions he possessed, a water bottle, and a rusty knife for self-defense. He looked at his humble tent one last time, as if bidding farewell to a part of his life, and then set off eastward, the direction the larger part of the map seemed to indicate. The journey was arduous and long. The sun was scorching, and the sands were shifting, every step requiring double the effort. But the hope that the map had planted in his heart gave him the strength to keep going. After days of continuous walking, the terrain began to change. Some strange sandhills began to appear, and the winds began to carry sounds that Leo had never heard before. Faint whispers, as if echoes of distant voices. On the fifth night of his journey, while Leo was resting beside a large rock, he looked up at the sky. The sky was clear and studded with stars in a way he had never seen before. The stars seemed closer and brighter, like glittering jewels hanging in an endless black ceiling. As he gazed at this magnificent sight, he remembered his grandfather's tales of the forgotten city of stars, the magical city that appeared in the expanse every 100 years under a sky illuminated by stars falling like rain. At that moment, an idea flashed in his mind. Could the map he found be leading him to that legendary city? His enthusiasm and determination increased. The next morning, Leo resumed his journey with greater vigor. As he walked over a high sand dune, he stopped suddenly. Before him, as far as the eye could see, appeared a city unlike any he had ever seen in his life. It was a city built of pure white stone, shimmering under the golden rays of the sun as if it were a piece of paradise fallen to earth. But the most astonishing thing was the sky above it. The sky was filled with glittering stars, not only at night, but even in broad daylight. The stars seemed very close, as if they were about to fall on the city. It was a magical and breathtaking sight, surpassing any description he had heard in his grandfather's tales. Leo had finally arrived at the forgotten city of stars. However, he didn't yet know that this enchanting beauty concealed a dark secret and trapped souls waiting to be rescued. Leo hesitated for a moment as he stood on the outskirts of the shimmering city. It looked deserted, its streets silent, and its white houses empty of any signs of life. But the sky, illuminated by glittering stars above, pulsed with a strange energy, as if it were a living entity breathing slowly. Leo felt a hidden force drawing him in, a mixture of fear and curiosity, pushing him to take his first step onto the ground of the mysterious city. The streets were paved with smooth white stones, reflecting the light of the glowing stars above like a mirror. The houses, despite their similar exterior appearance, featured unique architectural details, delicate carvings adorning the walls, and towering arches leading to quiet inner courtyards. Leo had never seen such construction before. It combined simplicity and grandeur in one. Silence reigned, broken only by the faint sound of Leo's footsteps as he wandered through the empty streets. He began to examine the houses, peeking through the open windows into vacant rooms, simple furniture covered with a thin layer of dust, as if their inhabitants had suddenly departed long ago. While inspecting one of the houses, Leo noticed something peculiar hanging on a wall. It was a large canvas, but it wasn't painted with traditional colors. It looked as if it were made of starlight itself, forming a portrait of a beautiful woman with wide eyes, looking sorrowfully down. The light emanating from the painting was faint, but enough to see the delicate details in the woman's face and her flowing robes. Leo felt a strange sensation as he looked at the painting, as if the woman's eyes were addressing him and asking for something. Leo left the house and continued his walk through the silent streets. He reached a large square in the heart of the city, in the center of which stood a dry fountain made of the same shimmering white stone. Around the fountain were artistically carved stone benches, looking as if they were awaiting the return of those who once sat on them. Leo raised his head to look at the illuminated sky. The stars shone even brighter above this square. Suddenly, he heard a faint sound, like a fleeting whisper carried by the wind. Leo couldn't identify the source of the sound or understand its words, but he felt a shiver run down his spine. Leo listened intently, trying to catch any other sound. After a few moments, he heard the whisper again, this time a little louder and clearer. It sounded like the voices of many people speaking at once, but their voices were faint and hoarse, as if coming from a great distance. Leo began to wander around the square, trying to determine the direction of the sound. As he approached the dry fountain, the whisper became clearer. Now, Leo could distinguish some words, but they were fragmented and incomprehensible. "Help us. Trapped. Free us." The words of the whisper stopped abruptly, leaving Leo in bewilderment. Was he imagining things? Was loneliness and exhaustion playing tricks on him? But the strange feeling that had overcome him when he looked at the painting of the sad woman returned, this time stronger and more urgent. Leo decided to examine the fountain closely. He approached it and began to walk around it, carefully inspecting every part. He noticed the presence of delicate carvings on the base of the fountain, symbols similar to those on the map he had found. As he touched one of the carvings, he suddenly felt a slight warmth emanating from it. At that moment, he saw a faint light begin to appear from within the dry fountain. The light gradually intensified until it became a beam of pure white light ascending upwards towards the illuminated sky. When the beam of light reached the glittering stars, something strange happened. Some of the stars began to move, as if drawn to this light. Then, they began to make clear sounds. They were no longer just vague whispers, but real human voices, the voices of men, women, and children, all speaking at once, expressing their pain, sorrow, and desire for salvation. It's been so long. We've been here for centuries. Please help us. Leo was stunned by the magnitude of what he saw and heard. The glittering stars in the sky had transformed into trapped souls, yearning for freedom. At that moment, he remembered his grandfather's words about the spirits that dwell in the stars in the forgotten city of stars. They weren't just legends, they were a terrifying and moving reality. While Leo was trying to comprehend this amazing discovery, a figure suddenly emerged from between one of the nearby buildings. It was a tall man wearing a long black cloak that concealed his features. His eyes gleamed with a malicious light in the starlight, and on his head was a black turban adorned with a large gemstone that glowed with a dim red light. He carried a long staff made of shiny black wood, and on its top was a small skull that seemed to be smiling mockingly. The man looked at Leo with a piercing gaze, then gave a cold smile that made Leo feel a shiver run down his spine. "Who are you, stranger? And how dare you awaken my masters?" the man asked in a deep voice with a clear tone of threat. Leo felt fear creeping into his heart, but he tried to steady himself and replied in a firm voice, "I came to this city by chance. I knew nothing of what is happening here." The man let out a muffled laugh that echoed through the square. "By chance? Nothing happens by chance in my city. You are here for a reason, and I will find out what it is." Then he raised his staff towards the sky and said in a loud voice, "Oh, you stars, tell me who this intruder is and what he wants." At that moment, the glittering stars began to shine even brighter, and the whispers rose again, but this time they carried a note of fear and anxiety. Leo looked at the sky and saw that some stars began to tremble as if trying to move away from the man's staff. Leo realized that this man was the sorcerer who controlled time and held the souls of the stars captive, and that he had to face him if he wanted to free the city and the trapped souls before the city disappeared forever. The sorcerer's voice rose sharply, piercing the silence of the forgotten city of stars. "Intruder, you will not escape me and my powers. I will know why you have come here, and you will pay dearly for desecrating the sanctity of my city." As he spoke, the ground beneath Leo's feet began to tremble, and he felt a hidden force trying to pull him downwards. Leo tried to maintain his balance, but the force was growing stronger. He looked around in terror and saw that the cobblestones in the square were beginning to crack and crumble. The stars in the sky glowed even brighter, as if watching this conflict with concern. The sound of whispers rose again, this time closer and more urgent, as if the trapped souls were trying to warn or help him. "Don't give up. His power comes from time. Seek the past." Leo didn't understand the meaning of these fragmented words, but he felt that they held a key to facing this powerful sorcerer. He looked at the sorcerer, who was raising his staff high, the red gemstone on his turban glowing with a demonic light. The sorcerer's features were now clearer, a pale face and sharp eyes looking at him with disdain, and a mocking smile played on his thin lips. "It seems my masters, the stars, know you, wretch. They will reveal your malicious intentions to me," the sorcerer said with a confident tone, then pointed his staff at Leo. At that moment, a beam of dense black light shot from the staff, hurtling towards Leo with lightning speed. Leo had no time to think. He jumped quickly to the side, barely escaping the black beam that struck the ground behind him, creating a small crater filled with rising smoke. Leo realized that this sorcerer possessed immense power, and a direct confrontation would be suicide. He had to find another way to defeat him. Leo remembered the fragmented words he had heard from the stars. His power comes from time. Seek the past. What did that mean? Was the sorcerer drawing his power from something in the past? Was there a way to sever this connection? While Leo was thinking, the sorcerer launched another attack. This time, he didn't fire a single beam, but several consecutive black rays, chasing Leo everywhere. Leo ran, jumped, and hid behind buildings, trying to evade these deadly attacks. He felt extremely exhausted, but he knew he couldn't give up. The fate of the city and the trapped souls hung in the balance. In a moment of desperation, as Leo hid behind a cracked wall, he looked at the ground and saw something that caught his attention. It was a piece of mosaic lying on the ground, depicting a strange image of an old man wearing a long robe and holding an hourglass in his hand. The old man was looking at the hourglass with a sad face, as if time were slipping through his fingers. Leo picked up the piece of mosaic and looked at it carefully. Suddenly, he felt a slight dizziness in his head, and images began to flash through his mind. He saw the city in the past, a vibrant city teeming with inhabitants, its streets filled with people and noise, and its markets bustling with goods. He saw the old man from the image, looking younger and happier, wearing the same long robe and holding the same hourglass. He seemed to be an important figure in the city. Then, Leo saw another scene. The sky above the city began to darken, and stars began to fall like rain. But this time, the stars weren't just glittering lights. They were human souls, materializing and falling to the ground with moans and groans. He saw the old man trying to protect the city and its inhabitants, but his power seemed insufficient. Finally, Leo saw the current sorcerer, but he looked different. He was a handsome young man with an ambitious look in his eyes. Leo saw the young sorcerer standing before the old man, holding a staff in his hand that resembled the one the sorcerer held now. A long conversation took place between them that Leo couldn't hear, but he sensed the tension and conflict in the atmosphere. Then, he saw the young sorcerer raise his staff and fire a black beam that struck the old man, who fell to the ground clutching his hourglass. The images vanished suddenly, and Leo returned to his reality. His heart was pounding, and his mind was racing with thoughts. He now understood what the stars' words meant. The current sorcerer wasn't the true founder of the city, but someone who had seized it and imprisoned the souls of its inhabitants in the stars. And the old man he saw in the mosaic was probably the true ruler of the city, or someone who possessed power related to time. Leo looked at the piece of mosaic in his hand, then looked at the star-illuminated sky. He felt a sense of responsibility towards these trapped souls. He couldn't leave them suffering like this. He had to find a way to defeat the sorcerer and restore the city's stolen past. While Leo was thinking, the sorcerer suddenly appeared before him, as if he had been watching him all along. "It seems you've found something interesting, intruder," the sorcerer said with a mocking tone, then reached out to take the piece of mosaic from Leo. But Leo was faster. He jumped back and dodged the sorcerer's hand. He looked at the sorcerer defiantly and said, "I know now who you are and what you have done to this city." The smile froze on the sorcerer's face, and his gaze turned to intense anger. "You are mistaken, fool. This city is mine, and these stars are my servants. I will not allow you to ruin my kingdom." Then he raised his staff again, ready to launch another attack. But this time, Leo was ready. He remembered the image he had seen in the mosaic, the image of the old man and the hourglass. Perhaps that hourglass was the key to the sorcerer's power. Maybe if he could destroy it, he could weaken the sorcerer and free the trapped souls. Leo looked around quickly, searching for anything that resembled an hourglass. Suddenly, he saw something that caught his attention. There was a tall tower at the end of the square, and on its top was a huge hourglass, glowing with a faint light. Leo realized that this was the hourglass he had seen in his vision. He had to reach it as quickly as possible. Leo wasted no time. He sprinted towards the towering spire at the end of the square, ignoring the angry gaze directed at him by the sorcerer. The tower was built from the same shimmering white stone that characterized the city, but it was much taller than any other building, piercing the illuminated sky as if trying to reach the stars themselves. The sorcerer let out an enraged cry and waved his staff once more. This time, not only did black rays shoot from it, but dark specters emerged from around him, floating in the air and emitting terrifying sounds. The specters lunged towards Leo, trying to stop him from reaching the tower. Leo ran as fast as he could, dodging the specters that tried to grab him. The specters were translucent, but their touch was cold and painful, as if they were draining his energy and life. He leaped over cracked stones and squeezed between deserted buildings, trying to get away from them and reach the base of the tower. Leo looked up and saw the huge hourglass glittering faintly at the top of the tower. It looked very far away, but he was determined to reach it no matter what. He finally reached the base of the tower and saw a massive door made of black wood, decorated with strange carvings. Leo tried to open it, but the door was locked tight. As he was trying to open the door, he felt a cold shadow approaching from behind him. He turned around quickly and saw one of the dark specters rushing towards him. He had no time to think. He raised the rusty knife he carried and swung it in the air. Nothing happened to the specter, but it paused for a moment as if surprised by this action. Leo realized that an ordinary knife couldn't harm these ghostly creatures. Leo thought quickly. He remembered the stories his grandfather used to tell him about spirits and ghosts, and how they could be repelled using sacred or pure objects. He had nothing of the kind with him now. But suddenly, he remembered something. The piece of mosaic depicting the old man and the hourglass. Perhaps it held some power. Leo took the piece of mosaic out of his pocket and held it up to the specter. At that moment, a faint light began to emanate from the piece of mosaic, and the image glowed more intensely. The dark specter recoiled, letting out a faint cry of pain, and then vanished into the air. Leo was astonished. It seemed the piece of mosaic did indeed hold some power, perhaps the power of the old man who represented the city's stolen past. Leo decided to use it as a weapon against the specters. While he was trying to open the locked door, more dark specters appeared, surrounding him from all sides. Leo raised the piece of mosaic and began to wave it in the air. Every time a specter approached, the light emanating from the mosaic made it retreat or disappear completely. Leo managed to fend off the specters temporarily, but he knew they would return. He had to find a way to enter the tower quickly. He looked around again and noticed a small window located a little above the ground. Maybe he could climb through it. Leo jumped and tried to reach the window, but it was higher than he had anticipated. At that moment, he felt a force helping him to rise. He looked down and saw that the ground was shaking again, but this time it was shaking in a different way, as if trying to push him upwards. He looked at the sky and saw that the glittering stars were beginning to gather above the tower, as if trying to help him too. Thanks to the help of the stars and the trembling ground, Leo was able to reach the window and climb into the tower. The room inside the tower was dark and cold, with nothing but a narrow stone staircase spiraling up the walls. Leo began to climb the stairs quickly, hearing the sounds of angry specters trying to follow him from outside. The higher Leo climbed, the more power he felt in the piece of mosaic he carried. The light emanating from it began to grow stronger and brighter, as if illuminating his path in the darkness. Leo continued to climb, ignoring his exhaustion and fear, determined to reach the top of the tower and destroy the hourglass that held the souls of the stars captive. After a long and arduous climb, Leo finally reached the top of the tower. There was a small circular room, and in its center stood the huge hourglass he had seen from below. The hourglass was made of dark glass and a golden frame decorated with intricate carvings. The golden sand inside it glittered with a faint light, as if pulsing with life. Leo stood before the hourglass, feeling a strange power emanating from it. He knew this was the source of the sorcerer's power, He had to destroy it to free the trapped souls and save the city. At that moment, the sorcerer suddenly appeared in the room, as if he had teleported through time or space. His face was filled with anger and panic as he saw Leo standing before the hourglass. "Don't do this, you fool!" the sorcerer screamed in a terrifying voice, then waved his staff, trying to attack Leo. But Leo was ready. He raised the piece of mosaic and waved it at the sorcerer. This time, a powerful beam of white light shot from the mosaic, striking the sorcerer directly. The sorcerer recoiled, screaming in pain, and the black cloak he wore began to burn. Leo didn't waste any opportunity. He raised the rusty knife he carried and struck the hourglass with all his might. The glass shattered, and the golden sand scattered in the air. At that moment, something amazing happened. A bright light began to emanate from the place where the hourglass had been, and it spread throughout the city. The glittering stars in the sky began to shine even brighter, and the whispers rose again in voices of joy and gratitude. Leo felt an immense power surge through his body, as if the trapped souls of the stars were thanking him for their liberation. Leo looked at the sorcerer, who was writhing on the ground in pain, his black cloak burning and turning to ashes. The sorcerer's power began to fade with the shattering of the hourglass. Leo realized he had won this battle, but he knew that the adventure was not over yet. He had to discover more about the secret of this city and how to protect it from falling into the hands of evil forces again. As the hourglass shattered and the golden sand scattered, a bright light flooded the entire city. Leo felt an overwhelming power surge through him, as if the liberated souls of the stars were bestowing their blessings and gratitude upon him. He looked at the sky and saw the stars twinkling with a light he had never seen before, as if celebrating their return to free existence. The whispers were no longer faint and hoarse, but had transformed into clear and joyous voices, sounds that filled the air with laughter, hymns, and kind words. Leo looked down at the sorcerer writhing on the ground. With the power of the hourglass fading, his own power was also diminishing. The black cloak had completely burned away, revealing a pale and frail old man, looking weak and emaciated. The malicious gleam in his eyes was gone, replaced by a look of fear and regret. At that moment, the dark specters that had been hovering around the tower began to gradually fade away, as if losing their source of existence. They all eventually disappeared, leaving behind a clean air and a sense of peace that the city hadn't known for a long time. Leo descended from the tower, feeling exhausted but filled with satisfaction. When he reached the square, he found that the deserted white houses were beginning to change. Colors gradually returned to the walls, windows and doors opened by themselves, and the old furniture was renewed and became more beautiful. The city looked as if it were regaining its youth and vitality, as if awakening from a long slumber. The inhabitants of the city, who had been trapped in the stars, began to rematerialize. They appeared in the streets and squares, men, women, and children, wearing flowing robes that shimmered in the starlight. Their faces were filled with joy and amazement as they saw their city returning to life. They rushed towards each other, embracing and weeping with joy after centuries of separation. An old man with a long white beard approached Leo. His eyes were shining with tears, and a warm smile graced his face. "Young stranger, thank you. You have saved our city and freed our souls from the prison of the evil sorcerer." Leo realized that this old man was the same person he had seen in the piece of mosaic, the original ruler of the city, or at least a respected figure within it. "I only did what needed to be done," Leo replied modestly. "Don't say that, my son," said the old man, placing his hand on Leo's shoulder. "You faced great danger for us. How can we reward you?" Leo looked around at the city that was coming back to life, and at the happy faces of its inhabitants. "I don't want any reward. It is enough for me to see your city return to what it once was." The old man smiled and said, "This shows the kindness of your heart and your nobility. But at least allow us to know your name, O brave one." "My name is Leo," replied the young man. "What a beautiful name," said the old man. "We will always remember you, Leo, the liberator of the forgotten city of stars." Then he turned to the inhabitants who had gathered around them and began to tell them the story of Leo and his courage. Leo spent several days in the city, getting to know its inhabitants and listening to their stories and tales of the past. He learned that the evil sorcerer had originally been one of the city's inhabitants, but he had coveted power and exploited the magic of the hourglass to imprison their souls in the stars and rule the city for himself. He also learned that the hourglass was not just a magical tool, but it represented the essence of time itself in this city, and by shattering it, the souls were freed and time returned to its natural course. The old man told him that the city appeared in this place exactly every 100 years, then disappeared again to return to its own realm. But this time, thanks to Leo, the city would return free and happy. Before the city was due to disappear again, Leo decided to depart. The inhabitants bid him farewell with great warmth, and they presented him with symbolic gifts, expressing their thanks and appreciation. Leo promised them that he would never forget them and would tell their story to everyone he met. When Leo reached the outskirts of the city, he looked back at it one last time. It shimmered with enchanting beauty under a sky filled with free stars. Leo felt a deep sense of gratitude for having been a part of this fantastical tale. Then he turned and set off back into the vast expanse, carrying with him the memories of the forgotten city of stars and the story of the souls that had been liberated. As he walked alone across the expanse under the moonlight, Leo looked at the star-studded sky. Now, the stars looked different. They no longer seemed like trapped souls, but like old friends smiling at him from afar. Leo felt that his life had changed forever after this experience, and that he had discovered something important about the power of hope, courage, and kindness. He knew that this adventure wouldn't be his last, and that there were more secrets and mysteries awaiting him in this vast world. But he was now ready to face anything fate held in store for him, carrying in his heart the memory of the forgotten city of stars. Days after Leo's departure from the forgotten city of stars, as he journeyed across the vast plain, the familiar monotony of the landscape began to subtly shift. The strange sand hills that had guided him to the magical city had disappeared, replaced by a more typical, albeit still harsh and arid terrain. Leo's thoughts were consumed by the extraordinary events he had witnessed. He still found it hard to believe he had played a part in such a fantastical adventure. Freeing trapped souls, confronting a powerful sorcerer, and witnessing an entire city return to life. These were memories that would forever be etched into his mind. One night, while camping under a clear sky dotted with stars that now seemed to shine with a newfound joy and freedom in his eyes, Leo discovered something peculiar beside his humble pack. He had no recollection of placing it there. It was a small piece of folded parchment, tied with a slender thread of silver silk. The parchment was old, yet remarkably well preserved, as if protected by some magical force from the ravages of time. Carefully unfolding the parchment, Leo revealed delicate writing in a language he had never encountered before. The letters were elegant and intricate, as if drawn by the quill of a skilled artist. Initially, the script was completely foreign to him. But as he gazed at the strange symbols, a familiar sensation stirred within him, as if a part of his mind recognized this language. Leo recalled the ancient map that had led him to the forgotten city of stars. It contained similar symbols, albeit less detailed. He retrieved the map from his pack and compared it with the writing on the parchment. He noticed some similarities, particularly in certain symbols that seemed to recur. Leo spent long hours trying to decipher this unfamiliar language. He used the map as a reference, attempting to connect the similar symbols. After much painstaking effort, he began to discern some simple words and phrases. The language appeared very old, perhaps predating even the existence of the forgotten city of stars. Eventually, Leo managed to translate a significant portion of the message. The message was addressed to him personally and signed by a name he had never heard: Elara. The message seemed to be a warning or an invitation, speaking of a new danger threatening the forgotten city of stars and another world connected to it. "O you who have freed the stars, Leo, heed my words," the message began. "You have succeeded in defeating the cruel guardian of time, but this was merely one chapter in a long tale. The power from which the sorcerer drew his strength has not vanished entirely. It is now in a state of flux and may attract other malevolent forces from distant realms." The message went on to describe the history of the forgotten city of stars, revealing its role as a nexus point between different worlds. It mentioned that the stars were not only trapped souls, but also guardians of other realms, and their liberation had inadvertently opened doors that had long been sealed. "There is an ancient power seeking to exploit this chaos to invade our world and the realm of stars," Elara wrote. "It is the power of eternal darkness, which has always sought to consume the light. I have sensed your presence, Leo, and the strength of your heart and courage. You are our last hope." The message concluded with an invitation for Leo to seek a place called the Gate of Worlds, a secret location connecting the vast plain with the other world threatened by darkness. Elara promised that he would meet another individual there who would aid him in his quest. Enclosed with the message was a simple drawing of another map, different from the one that had led him to the city, indicating an unknown location in the expanse. Leo was astounded as he read the message. He had not anticipated that his adventure in the forgotten city of stars was merely the beginning of something larger and more perilous. But the sense of responsibility he felt towards the souls he had freed and the city he had saved compelled him to accept this new challenge. Leo looked at the map enclosed with the message. The indicated location appeared distant, but he was determined to go there. He gathered his belongings and prepared to set off once more. He knew the journey ahead would be more difficult and dangerous, but he was confident that he would not face this challenge alone. The free souls of the stars were with him, and the power of the past supported him. Leo set off in the direction indicated by the map, carrying in his heart the hope of saving other worlds from the threat of eternal darkness. His mission had just begun. Leo embarked on a new journey, guided by the simple map that Elara had enclosed with her message. This time, the destination seemed more obscure. There were no distinct landmarks like the peculiar sandhills that had led him to the forgotten city of stars. The map indicated a vast area of the plain, with only one marking identifying the desired location: a massive rock with a strange shape resembling the head of an ox. This journey felt different. Leo sensed that the plain itself had altered. Strong winds carrying strange sounds, like whispers from other worlds, would occasionally sweep across him. At times, he would witness mirages that appeared more real than any he had seen before, images of bizarre cities and creatures unlike any he had encountered. It felt as if the veil between worlds had thinned after the liberation of the stars. One night, as Leo slept, he was awakened by a strange rustling sound. He cautiously opened his eyes and saw an unfamiliar creature standing near his tent. The creature was small, about the size of a cat, but it was covered in soft fur that glowed with a faint light in the darkness. It had large eyes that gleamed with intelligence and curiosity, and pointed ears that twitched attentively. The creature didn't seem aggressive. Instead, it looked at Leo with anticipation. Leo tried speaking to it gently, but the creature didn't respond with understandable words, only emitting sounds like soft chirps. After a few moments of hesitation, the creature slowly approached Leo and began to sniff his hand. It then rubbed its furry head against Leo's hand, as if trying to befriend him. Leo felt a mixture of surprise and curiosity towards this strange creature. He decided to name it Lumi because of the faint light that emanated from its fur. From that moment on, Lumi accompanied Leo on his journey, acting like a guide or guardian. Lumi possessed a keen sense of smell and would often lead Leo to sources of water or warn him of nearby dangers. After several days of travel, the silhouette of the rock resembling an ox's head began to appear on the horizon, just as depicted on the map. It was indeed a colossal rock, rising majestically from the sand dunes, its distinctive shape resembling an angry bull's face gazing at the sky. When Leo reached the base of the rock, he began to examine it, searching for any sign indicating the presence of the Gate of Worlds. Initially, he saw nothing. The rock appeared solid and impenetrable, but Lumi began to move around the rock energetically, sniffing at the cracks and small crevices. It then stopped abruptly in front of a particular section of the rock and began to bark with a high-pitched chirp, as if pointing to something. Leo approached the place Lumi indicated and examined it closely. He noticed a hidden inscription on the rock's surface, a series of intertwined symbols that looked familiar. They resembled the symbols he had seen on the old map and on Alara's message. Leo recalled some of the words he had managed to translate from Alara's message, which hinted at a way to open the gate. The message spoke of the necessity of using the melody of the stars and the echo of the past. Leo had no idea what these words meant, but he decided to try everything he could. Leo closed his eyes and began to remember the sounds he had heard in the forgotten city of stars after the liberation of the souls. He recalled the sounds of laughter, hymns, and kind words that had filled the air. He tried to imagine these sounds in his mind, recreating them within himself as a quiet and beautiful melody. While Leo focused on this inner melody, he took out the piece of mosaic depicting the old man from his pocket. He gently touched the image and began to remember the scenes he had witnessed when he first touched it, images of the city in the past and the lives of its inhabitants before the sorcerer imprisoned them. He tried to conjure in his mind the echo of the past, the memories of the city and its souls. At that moment, Leo felt a strange power emanate from the piece of mosaic. The light radiating from it began to intensify, and the symbols carved on the rock began to tremble slightly. Then, suddenly, a section of the rock began to move slowly, as if opening to reveal a dark entrance. The entrance was a narrow opening in the rock, the interior obscured by impenetrable darkness. But Leo felt a hidden force drawing him inwards, like a call from another world. He looked at Lumi, who was standing beside him, looking at the opening with anticipation. Then, Leo took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness, ready to face whatever awaited him at the Gate of Worlds. He knew this place would lead him to the individual promised by Alara, the one who would help him in his mission to save the worlds from the threat of eternal darkness. As soon as Leo stepped inside the rock opening, he didn't find himself in a dark cave as he had expected. Instead, a dim light enveloped him, and he felt as if he were floating in an endless void. There was no ground beneath his feet, nor sky above his head, only a colored mist that constantly shifted, ranging from sky blue to emerald green and deep violet. Strange sounds echoed around him, not clear words, but melodies and musical rhythms coming from every direction. Leo felt no fear, but rather a strange peace washed over him. It felt like returning to a familiar place, as if his soul recognized this colored void. Lumi, the small creature that had accompanied him, floated beside him, its fur glowing with an even brighter light than before, as if drawing energy from this strange place. After a while, Leo felt as if he passed through a thin veil, and the colored mist gradually faded away to reveal an entirely new vista. He found himself standing in a lush green valley, surrounded by towering mountains covered with dense forests. A river flowed through the middle of the valley, its water as clear as crystal, reflecting the golden rays of the sun. The sky was a clear blue, adorned with thin white clouds, and the stars appeared even closer and more luminous here. The valley teemed with life. Leo saw strange animals he had never seen before grazing in the green meadows, colorful birds flying in the sky and singing sweet melodies, and huge trees bearing glittering golden fruits. The place looked like a hidden paradise, another world far removed from the harshness of the vast plain. As Leo explored this enchanting valley, he heard a voice calling his name. He turned and saw a figure approaching him. It was a young man who looked to be around his age, but his features were different. His hair was long and silver, cascading down his shoulders, and his eyes were wide and the color of the deep blue sea. He wore a simple white robe that shone in the sun, and in his hand was a long staff made of white wood, intricately carved. The young man smiled warmly and said, "Welcome, Leo. I am the one you seek." My name is Kai. Leo felt a sense of relief as he saw this friendly young man. "You are Kai? Are you the one Alara mentioned in her message?" Kai nodded and said, "Yes, I have been expecting you. I sensed your arrival through the Gate of Worlds. Alara is wise and ancient, and she knows who can help us face the darkness." "Darkness?" Leo asked. "What is happening?" Alara's message was a little vague. Kai sighed and said, "It is serious, Leo. After the liberation of the stars, the balance of power between the worlds shifted. An ancient evil force that had been imprisoned for a long time has begun to regain its strength. It is the power of eternal darkness, as Alara mentioned, and it seeks to devour all light and beauty in this cosmos." Kai continued to explain to Leo that the forgotten city of stars had always served as a bulwark against this dark force. The stars, in addition to being trapped souls, were also guardians of other realms, and their combined power formed a strong barrier that prevented the darkness from spreading. But after the liberation of the stars, this barrier had weakened, and the darkness had begun to seep into their world. "We need your help, Leo," Kai said earnestly. "Your courageous heart and inner strength are our only remaining hope. You managed to defeat the Guardian of Time, and this shows that you possess the ability to confront the darkness." Leo asked, "But how can I help? I am just an ordinary young man from the plain." Kai smiled and said, "Don't say that, Leo. You have touched the power of the past and freed the souls of the stars. You have a connection to this city and this world. Alara believes that you are the only one capable of stopping the darkness." Kai explained to Leo that the power of darkness was embodied in an evil entity seeking to control the heart of light, the source of energy and life in their world. If the darkness managed to seize the heart of light, it would plunge the world into eternal darkness. "We must reach the heart of light before the darkness does," Kai said. "But the path to it is fraught with danger. We will face creatures of darkness and their followers who seek to prevent us." Leo looked into Kai's clear blue eyes and felt confidence and strength emanating from them. He knew nothing of this new world or the dark power that threatened it, but he was determined to help. He had saved the forgotten city of stars once, and he could do it again. "I am ready," Leo said seriously. "Tell me what I need to do." Kai smiled and said, "That's what I expected from you, Leo. Now, we must begin our journey immediately. The darkness will not wait." Then he waved his white staff, and a majestic white horse appeared beside him, as if a creature of moonlight. "This is Lumina, the horse of light. She will carry us swiftly to our destination." Leo and Kai mounted Lumina, and they galloped across the green valley, heading towards the unknown, towards the decisive confrontation with the power of darkness that threatened to swallow the light from the cosmos. The wind caressed their hair, and Leo felt hope rekindle in his heart. He was not alone in this battle. He had a new friend, and an entire world depended on his courage. The adventure had just begun, and this time it was bigger and more important than anything he had faced before. Leo and Kai rode Lumina, the horse of light, soaring above verdant valleys and dense forests. Their journey was swift, but not without peril. They encountered bizarre, twisted creatures, appearing as solidified shadows, attempting to halt their progress. Kai used his white staff to ward them off, while Leo held the piece of mosaic, which glowed with increasing intensity the closer they drew to their destination. Kai told Leo that the Heart of Light resided atop the highest peak in the mountain range surrounding the valley, in a sacred place protected by ancient magical forces. As they approached the mountains, the environment transformed. The lush greenery vanished, replaced by sharp black rocks and deep, shadowy ravines. An intense cold permeated their bones, as if darkness had already begun to seep into this world. Finally, they reached the base of the tallest peak. The path to the summit was treacherous and steep, impossible for Lumina to ascend. Leo and Kai dismounted and began to climb, helping each other navigate the loose rocks and deep crevasses. The atmosphere grew increasingly dim, and a thick black fog enveloped them, obscuring their vision and trying to mislead them. But Leo remained determined to press on. He recalled the forgotten city of stars and its inhabitants, brought back to life by his actions. He remembered Alara's message and the hope she had placed in him. He could not fail now. After a strenuous climb, they finally reached the mountain summit. There was a small circular clearing, and in its center stood a strange structure made of shimmering white crystals, radiating a bright, warm light. This was the Heart of Light. However, there was something else in the clearing. Before the Heart of Light stood a massive, dark entity, resembling a dense black cloud swirling upon itself, emitting menacing humming sounds. This was the power of eternal darkness. "You have finally arrived," the darkness boomed in a hoarse voice that shook the very ground. "I anticipated your coming, but it matters not. Soon everything will be plunged into darkness." The darkness lunged towards the Heart of Light, attempting to absorb its energy. But Kai raised his white staff and unleashed a powerful beam of light, striking the darkness and momentarily halting its advance. "Leo, now!" Kai cried. "You must protect the Heart of Light with all your strength." Leo didn't hesitate for a moment. He raised the piece of mosaic and moved towards the Heart of Light. He could feel the power emanating from it, as if it resonated with the bright light radiating from the crystals. Leo placed the piece of mosaic on one of the crystals, and at that moment, a powerful white light erupted from it, merging with the light of the Heart of Light and illuminating the entire clearing. The darkness recoiled, shrieking in pain, and the black cloud began to gradually dissipate. The light emanating from the Heart of Light and the piece of mosaic was too intense, burning and weakening the darkness. But the darkness had not yet been vanquished. It let out a final enraged cry and attempted to attack Leo and Kai with the last of its strength. It surged towards them like a whirlwind of shadows, but Lumina suddenly appeared before them, leaping between them and the darkness, shielding them with her powerful white light. The darkness collided with Lumina, and the noble creature let out a high-pitched whinny before she too faded into light. Lumina had sacrificed herself to protect Leo and Kai. Leo felt a deep sorrow for the loss of this noble creature, but there was no time for grief. The darkness was still present, albeit much weaker. He looked at Kai, who also appeared determined. "Together, Leo!" Kai yelled, raising his staff once more. Together, they unleashed their strongest light, the light of the Heart of Light and the light of the past emanating from the piece of mosaic, towards the remaining darkness. The darkness could not withstand such immense power. It began to fade and disintegrate until nothing remained but tiny particles of black smoke dissipating into the air. Light had triumphed over darkness. Leo and Kai felt utterly exhausted, but they also experienced overwhelming joy. They had saved their world from the threat of eternal darkness. At that moment, an image of Alara appeared before Leo, smiling at them with appreciation. "You have done it, Leo," she said in a calm voice. "You have proven your courage and the strength of your heart. You are a true hero." Ilara's image faded, and peace returned to the valley. The light grew brighter, the black clouds vanished, and colors returned to nature. Leo and Kai felt the world breathe a sigh of relief. Leo looked at Kai and said, "We did it." Kai smiled and said, "Yes, my friend. We did it together." A few days later, it was time for Leo to return to his own world. Kai bid him farewell warmly, promising that they would meet again if the world ever needed their help. Leo returned through the Gate of Worlds, carrying with him the memories of his heroic adventure and the friendship they had forged. When Leo arrived back on the vast plain, he looked at the sky and saw the stars twinkling with a new light, the light of freedom, hope, and peace. He felt that his mission was complete, but he knew that there were always new adventures awaiting him in this magical world. As he walked back towards his humble tent, he carried in his heart the story of the forgotten city of stars, the story of the heart of light he had saved from darkness, and the story of an ordinary young man who had become a hero. And here the story ends. Follow more stories on the Eastern Nights channel. If you like the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to receive all new updates, and let us know your opinion in the comments.